I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you. And actually, what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me. And I want to express a huge, massive welcome today to my guest, Ryanne Siddiq. So when Ryanne and I first started talking, she shared her guiding life quote with me, which is attributed to Mario Andretti. And that is, when life gives you a curve, downshift and take it aggressively. I absolutely love the sentiment behind this of really seizing every opportunity. So Ryanne, you had a real change of direction from your career as an award-winning finance professional through debilitating chronic illness symptoms and a redirection now into writing children's books. So can you tell me a bit about the impact that it's had on you and your family in physical, emotional, financial, and any other terms, in fact?
Oh my gosh. To go through all of that, we'd need like 3 days. But I am one of those people who's actually incredibly grateful for COVID, because I remember, just kind of never really feeling well my entire life, as far back as I can remember. It wasn't anything horrible, just, not as great as everybody else seemed to feel. And then, things like I had a car accident where it was a tractor trailer that hit like 8 of us. And so I was number 7 of 8. And it took me a really long time to recover from that. And, when I'm married and I'm trying to have kids, and it's taking a really long time, even though I'm, a reasonably healthy person. Recovery from pregnancy took a really long time. And it, starts to make you question, like, is something wrong? Is this normal? Like, am I exhausted because I just, had a kid, or, what's going on? So when we look back, it's like, oh, I know what that is now. So having COVID the first time brought out really bad tremors. And, here we are, my job I was working for an investment firm. I could not do my job from home because of federal regulations, client privacy, all of this. So it was basically, going from working to being at home with my kids doing distance learning. And one or both of my children or myself were in tears daily. It was just awful. But when we had COVID, and now all of a sudden I'm having these debilitating tremors, I'm dropping things, I can hardly write. And I'm, we're trying to figure out where these tremors are coming from. And, I'm going through testing for Parkinson's, for MS, like all this really big, scary stuff. And my doctor said, well, hang on, wait a minute. This came out after you had COVID. Okay, so we're going to do a post-COVID treatment. It was 2 weeks of this medicine cocktail. It was horrible. I felt miserable. And after the 2 weeks was over, the tremors are gone. So, okay, great. It was long COVID. No big deal. So I have COVID again. It was about a year after the first time. So about 6 months after I'm treated for long COVID. And my husband and I, after recovering mostly, are in Austin at a legit Formula One track, like a bucket list weekend. My parents have the kids. We are with our car on this racetrack, and I'm dangerous. I'm having these tremors again. I'm having this mind-body disconnect. I went out, I did 15 minutes, and I'm like, I can't do this. There's something wrong. The tremors were awful. I'm having cardiac issues. I was dangerous to myself. I was dangerous to others. So I had to pull myself off the track. And it was devastating. Not only was it supposed to be this fun weekend, but now like I'm really not understanding what's going on with my body. So first thing Monday morning, I call my doctor, and he said, with all of the symptoms for as long as I've been treating you, I really think that this is Lyme. And I said, well, why did the long COVID treatment work? And he said, oh, because part of that treatment was also a Lyme treatment.
Right.
So sure enough, we sent my blood work off to a specialized lab in California. And even though I had been tested many times over the years through regular blood work, it lit up like a Christmas tree. And so a few days after my 40th birthday, I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme. And they think that I've had it for over 20 years. And I cried. I cried. And they were tears of relief because I finally had an answer of what was going on. And I knew Lyme treatment was going to be a struggle. I didn't realize quite how much of a struggle, but it was amazing to be able to know what I was fighting and not fighting an invisible enemy. So the Lyme treatment is horrible. It's a lot of making yourself feel worse before you feel better. It's a lot of having to convince yourself to take those pills, even though you know it's going to be awful temporarily. But I've gone from, only being awake to get my kids to and from school, not being able to eat. I was having really horrible neurological symptoms, especially during treatment. They really came out, and I was hypersensitive to everything. So smell, sight, taste, touch, bright lights, my family talking at the table, eating with them. I couldn't smell anything. I couldn't have my kids touch me. It was just horrendous. And so now, okay, so I know the enemy I'm fighting, but now I'm feeling even worse, even more horrible because I can't participate in my family life. Yeah. So one of the only things that I was able to do was read. And I was not reading self-help books. No, it was purely escape, all of the fantasy romance garbage. Oh my God. And I loved every minute of it. But I was reading voraciously. And all of a sudden, these ideas started to come into my head. It's like, well, now I never said I could do this better. I never said that. But if they can do it, I can do that too. And I can do that from my bed while I'm sick. And I can do that as I'm recovering. And then it was just like, well, now this stuff has to get out. This stuff has to come from my brain, and it has to be what it's going to be. And
unleashed a monster.
And it's been the best monster that I've released.
Amazing. Did you read a lot as a child, previous to your diagnosis and your recovery, or was it a kind of a new thing that you found?
It was. I do remember reading a lot as a kid, and it was, same kind of thing, fantasy. My father gave me a beautiful copy of The Hobbit. And so that was like, I remember that being like, oh, this is my first big girl book, And so, yeah, I remember reading like under tables with blankets draped over them. So I'm like, hiding in my little blanket cave and I would read that book. But I think, as you grow up, you don't really take the time for reading anymore. You have so many responsibilities, so many things that you have to be there for that, reading certainly wasn't on my plate for a really long time. So, yeah, I mean, it was really as I started to become so sick that I couldn't participate in life, that I couldn't watch movies. I couldn't watch TV because of the lights and the noise.
The lights.
So reading that was it. That was all I could do. And I'm so grateful for it.
I'm so inspired by the fact that you started this little part of our conversation by saying that you're really grateful for COVID and for finding out this news, even if it wasn't the news that you would have necessarily chosen to find out or to have as a, something that you live with. I think there's so many people who could have really responded really differently to that news and just kind of maybe in a defeatist way or a defeated way. So how do you keep that compassion with yourself, that kindness with yourself that allows you to find the positive out of this whole experience?
I'm going to start by saying that that is not a perfect journey at all. I definitely have my days where, it is dark and there are no positive things and it feels impossible to pick yourself up out of that sometimes. But one of the the main points of my book is the main character has to remember to be kind to herself. You know, there's these other voices in her head, the other car students, I would call them carlets, saying not so nice things. And she has to find it in herself to remember, her good points. And so it's funny because, that wasn't necessarily what I was thinking when I wrote it. But now looking at it, it was like I was trying to teach that lesson to kids, but it's also a reminder for myself.
Yeah.
Kindness, we always talk about kindness to others, being kind to others. And I think that is so incredibly important, even when others are not being kind to you.
Yeah.
But we forget about kindness to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's, something that every time I think about Phoebe and her story, it's like, oh yeah, that was a reminder for me too.
You know what? I have a really vivid memory as a child with my mum reading me a story. And she's reading the story and she's got tears coming down her cheeks. And I said to her, "Why are you crying? I didn't think it was a sad story." And she said, "You know what? It's sometimes in books, things hit differently for a child and for an adult."
Yep.
And I think that's exactly what you're describing. It sounds like a self-help book from an adult perspective.
Yes.
And a fun story from a child's perspective. And I think that was the same with this book that my mum was reading to me in that particular experience as well. So how have you changed as a mother, a wife, a daughter, a friend, a sister through all of these experiences?
I've had to really learn to say no, which is really hard because I don't like to say no, but I have to listen to my energy levels, and I have to make sure that I don't push too far, because if I do, then I'm out for several days to try to recover. I have to ask for help. That's a really hard thing to do too.
It's tough.
When you're
especially when
independent woman.
Absolutely. And in your career, no doubt, I'm sure that there was a certain worth attached to getting everything done yourself, because I've also worked in the finance world.
100%.
Yeah. So learning to ask for help and learning to stop, that's a big shift, isn't it?
It's a huge shift. And, like you said, a large part of your worth is attached to that. And we had a system where when we completed a task, it would turn blue. And it was, the saying was, when it's blue, you're through. Like if your whole task list was blue, then you were done for the day. So, I think, just as a parent in general, there's no blue, there's no accomplishing things, right? So then when you're
not the whole list.
No, never. So then when you're not feeling well, on top of that, and I mean, some days what you accomplish is, I got out of bed. That's really hard. Really hard. And, I think my biggest thing, talking about getting out of the darkness and staying positive, it's a lot of embracing the darkness and finding beauty in, the quiet and, where you can, and then just being thankful as much as you can for those things, and being thankful and grateful for the things that are around you, and the things you have been given. And that is what really helps to pull me out of those dark days. So
what's it mean to you to know that people all around the world are now reading your book?
Yeah.
And books soon, isn't it?
Yes, number 2 is going to be out like any day. To me, I hope it puts a smile on their face. I hope that they're able to see the lessons that Phoebe is trying to teach. And, I hope they find joy in it too.
And what are those messages that Phoebe wants to teach the readers or the world?
So in the first book, the big ones are resilience, kindness, again, to self and to others who are not so kind to you.
Yeah.
Self-worth. And like I said, finding that within yourself. So those are the big ones. You know what I mean? There's also you can be a winner even if you're not winning, that kind of thing. And I tried not to make it. So my illustrator for the first book was actually English, and he's like, well, we don't want to give out try hard trophies here. So that's not what it's about. We're not giving anybody a try hard trophy, but you still want to teach trying hard, right? No matter what the outcome is. So there's a little bit of that as well. But I just, like I said, I just hope it brings smiles to people's faces the way that it does mine.
So what have you learned to prioritize in your life, given everything that's happened over the last 5 or so years?
Oh gosh. I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, I have to prioritize myself, because I can't be a mom if I'm sick to the point that I have to be in bed all the time. But if I have to be in bed, it's better to do it before it gets too far.
Yeah.
Taking a 2-hour nap today is better than being in bed all day tomorrow because I pushed too hard. It has been a challenge. And, I have to look at it as I'm showing my kids that they also need to prioritize themselves. I'm teaching my kids, to be compassionate to others when they're down, which has been amazing because it has been challenging, but they've also become such sweet and caring little kids, through
Amazing.
this, making sure that, they bring me a piece of pizza when I've ordered it for them. And I'm able enough to get it from the delivery driver's hands to the table and then back to bed. And then they bring me a piece. And it's like, that's incredibly thoughtful. I can't eat that pizza because my stomach is, on a riot, but thank you. That's very thoughtful. So it has been a sweet journey in that way as well, seeing them become these really wonderful individuals, despite me being ill and not being the parent that I thought I would be, that I was hoping I would be. I'm just a different type of parent, and hopefully I'm getting the same results.
Is there anything you miss from your old career and that sort of lifestyle that you were living previously?
I wouldn't say from the career so much. I think, when you're going from, an established, well-oiled machine to doing things completely on your own in a, very creative manner, of course there's challenges, but I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back at this point. Even if I was the healthiest individual on the planet, where I am is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And
it's really interesting, actually, because you would think of a finance career being much more the sort of the logical, analytical side of your brain versus what you're obviously tapping into now and that very creative side of your brain. Do you think you were kind of making yourself fit into that sort of analytical, logical space before? Or has your brain evolved and you've kind of tapped into the other side of it since becoming or since finding out at least about your illness?
So funny story. My degree was actually art education. And what happened was, I was working in a bank while I was going through school and,
Right.
eventually, transitioned into investments. And I was about to start my student teaching when 2008 hit. Here I am, I'm in this cushy investment job and, we aren't getting bonuses, but my job is safe while I'm watching all of these teachers, especially for these extracurriculars like art, get let go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, I think I'm going to stay over here in this easy thing, easier at the time versus taking the risk of, going into a career where then I'm going to get let go because, I'm the art teacher. And so it just, it was kind of a completely wasted degree at that point. So in a way, I'm kind of going back to my roots.
Yeah.
But again, I'm grateful for the financial analytical side because, even as an author and being creative and, dealing with the illustrator and all of that, there's all of this sales and marketing side of being an author.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
So, if I didn't have that financial experience, if I didn't have that analytical experience, then, I would be floundering much more than I am. I'm not going to say I'm doing great, but, I think it would be a lot harder if I didn't have that to fall back on. So again, little things to be grateful for, right?
Yeah, of course. So what keeps you grounded and hopeful for those days, those times when it does feel like a struggle?
This is where my cars come in. This is where I get into a fun car and I turn up the music and I just drive, while my kids are at school, or on a weekend with my husband, my parents have the kids. We just drive. And there's a certain freedom in that, which has been amazing. And I'm sad that, I have this beautiful car for the track and I haven't been able to track it because I'm not feeling well. But, I'm getting better and I'm going to get back to that track. And, I'm still grateful that I can take the car out on a less intense drive, just in a less intense moment, but still have that feeling and that freedom.
Yeah.
So
just love it and enjoy it in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. So what inspiration do you hope that other people will get from your personal journey, not just the books necessarily, but everything that has led you up to writing the books?
So I believe that there's so many of us that have these awful things that happen and it can be hard. It can suck, you know? And I'm not saying that it doesn't suck and I'm not saying that it's not going to be hard, but I hope that by seeing me go through my journey that other people can see, well, if she can do it, so can I. And you don't have to be a car racer, you don't have to be an author, but if you can see me get out of bed, then you can do it too.
Yeah.
If you can see me get a little healthier through my choices and, my working with my doctor, you can do it too.
Yeah.
Keep advocating for yourself and keep fighting for yourself until you get to the point where those hard days and those sucky days, they might still happen. They still happen for me, but they happen a lot less.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so important to see people like you. So whether that's going through an experience that you're going through or, with an illness that you also have, and to kind of to hold on to those examples of this is what is possible for people like me going through the experiences that I'm going through. So I think you're an amazing shining light for people like that.
Well, I appreciate that.
So you did touch on this a little earlier, and I just wanted to pick up on it. How do you keep connected in what could be quite an isolating career? And I guess by necessity, you need to take a certain amount of time for yourself. So how do you keep that human connection, even outside of your family, given all of those circumstances?
It's funny because, I go to being an author is such a lonely career, but I have found such an amazing author community. And so, yes, it can be lonely, but I've connected with just some beautiful people as an author. And even to this day, there's a group of 5 of us women who, completely different genres, completely different things, but we're all just out there supporting each other. And every couple of weeks, we just jump on a call and, hey, what are you doing? Okay, cool. This is what I got going on. Well, what about this? Can you, can you add that? And it's been, it's been a great support. It's been a great motivation. It's been great to have the accountability. So that's been amazing. As far as, my personal life, I'm kind of grateful that I have friends who force me because sometimes I need that. And they know when to push and they know when to let me rest, which has been incredible because sometimes I don't even know that for myself.
Yeah. It's hard to know as well, isn't it? When you've kind of overridden that for so long in a career that is all about getting those blues and, just push, get the results. And you kind of override what your body is telling you that it needs.
Yes. Yeah. And this actually happened to me about a month ago where I was supposed to be on a phone call with my editor. And when he called, I was just so frazzled and out of it. And he said, I can tell that you're not feeling well. And then, I was like, it didn't really trigger. I'm like, yeah, okay. And he's like, well, let's just have this conversation another time. But then a couple hours later with my husband, and it was the same thing. He's like, I can tell you're not feeling well. I think you need to take a break. I think you need to put some things down and take a step back. And I'm still fighting in my head. I'm like, who are these men who are telling me like that I'm not feeling well? Like, this is not, I don't like this. And then I realized I'm like, oh, they're right though. I'm not feeling well. So it is good. Again, as a strong, independent woman, it's not exactly what I want to hear all the time, but it is good to have people who know you and care enough to say, you might be pushing too hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And then for us to be able to listen.
This is the thing, isn't it? Sometimes we need those advocates for ourselves whilst we're still learning to spot it and identify what those signs are ourselves. And then when we got those people who we trust have got our best interests at heart, and we go, oh, that's what it feels like when I'm not feeling 100%. Yeah. Oh, that's what it feels, and eventually you get the message.
Exactly.
And you can learn it for yourself. So how do you define success now? It's not getting all the blues on the list. So how do you define success for yourself now?
I think every day that looks different. Today it might be, getting that last illustration back from my illustrator and uploading that book. And tomorrow it might be, I got out of bed. I think success is always going to look different depending on, what's going on around you. But I think, the important thing is that we don't judge ourselves too harshly. And, we take success as it comes and not as we think it should be or how it should look like. Because I think if we keep saying, well, success should look like this, and then it doesn't, then we go back to, well, is there something wrong with me?
Yeah. It feels like there feels an incredible freedom in that, in just taking what comes and kind of just seeing it as success anyway, whether it is getting out of bed or whether it is pressing the final send submit button on publishing a book, and everything in between those things as well. But to have your own definition of success rather than a societal definition of success, that feels like there's an incredible freedom in there. Like you say, getting to it can be a challenge because there's still all that pressure and that noise that comes from outside. But that, when you're talking, I'm like, oh, that sounds good.
And that can be really hard, especially for, the people who are super analytical, and the ones who have a plan. For me, I'm a little bit more of a, fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. So, I know that it's going to be harder for these planners, the analyticals to kind of navigate that changing view. But I think it's really important. And
I guess you're proof that you can be both of those things.
in
Because
some
you
ways,
can be, you can be that creative version of yourself and you can be that analytical version of yourself, just tapping into a slightly different side of yourself in each given circumstance.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think too, maybe finding a looser definition of success, maybe for an analytical person who wants to have, more of a goal, today's success is I'm healthy. I feel good. Maybe not that I'm healthy, but I feel good. Tomorrow I got out of bed and I feel good. The next day I push publish. I feel good. So maybe changing, what success is and making it a looser definition for someone
And
who wants
sensation based as well.
yes. But for someone who wants to have something more to grasp other than, well, my definition of success is going to change on a daily basis. I don't like that. Pick something that, can stay the same, but be fed by the changes on a day-to-day basis. Because I do understand that analytical side of things too. And the need to have, a specific target.
Or maybe it's giving ourselves a bit of both. So you can have those sort of hard analytical goals, but also sort of feed in some of the slightly more fluid ones as well.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to wrap this up, really, what piece of wisdom would you like to give the 10-year-old version of yourself that you wish that you'd have grasped that lesson maybe from when you were a young child?
It's really funny because I look back and as a 10-year-old, this is where everyone's always asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
When somebody asked me as a 10-year-old, I never would have said I want to be an author. And so, here I am at this point in my life. Again, I'm grateful for everything and I'm so glad to be at this point. So my advice to my 10-year-old self would be, to do exactly what I've done is, be kind to yourself, find joy, in those tough times and just continue to be grateful. So, it's still the same advice that I would tell myself today, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I think that's such an inspiring message. And it doesn't have to apply to people who are living with a chronic disease. It could be just for everybody, that message. And I think it's so powerful. And you're such a bright light to be sharing that and, through your books and through just being who you are. So grateful for this conversation today. Thank you so much, Ryanne. It's really opened my eyes and my heart today. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. And I'm so grateful for your time.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.